Welcome back, my sheeple. We got another Troy Boys discussion today. Not on anime, though. Today, it's going to be on Star Wars Andor Season 1. I am your host, the superest of sheeps. Alongside my good friends and roommates, we got Messerschmitt.
Hello.
He is the troll in the basement. And then the one who shares the upstairs part of the house, Dom Smash.
Oh no.
I might mute him for that. That was pretty unacceptable. Anyways, we are all massive Star Wars fans. I know most of you who watch any of my other content know that from my Star Wars Commando video. But Star Wars has been a bit of a mixed bag, I would say. What do you guys say?
Trending up.
Right. It is trending up. And that is why we're going to talk about Andor today, because it is a pleasure to finally talk about a Star Wars property that's actually good. Holy crap.
Star Wars has always been good.
Yeah. True.
I mean, I'm pretty up on The Mandalorian too. I like it a lot, but I would say this is even better.
Yeah. Go for it, Miz.
I was just going to piggyback that. I think The Mandalorian has gotten a little bit sidetracked. There is a good kernel. Season 1 was my favorite.
Yeah.
On Mandalorian.
Yeah, I liked Mandalorian. I thought it was good, not great. I think I described it to these two that I feel like Mandalorian, like I said, good, not great, but it was like actually good, whereas like Kenobi was good, but was closer to bad than great. Yeah. But there was good in there. But I think we're all in agreement that Andor was all good. I mean, maybe there are a couple nitpicks here and there, and we'll go through that. And you'll kind of see
nitpicks don't hold it back.
Yes, no. Exactly.
They don't.
And you'll get the format real quick here. As you guys all know, Andor is one complete storyline. I mean, if you are watching this, you know that. We are going to spoil it because, I mean, we're just gonna, and fuck you if you don't like it. If you haven't seen it and you want to, or you're thinking about it, go do it. That's what we'll say, and then you can come back here and then see what we have to say about it. But if you were watching this to be like, oh, I don't know if it's going to be good, should I watch it? Yes, do it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so season 1 is one complete storyline. However, it's sort of grouped into little mini arcs that are all kind of stitched together. And so what we're going to be doing is going from little mini arc to mini arc, talking about it as kind of an individual, how it moves the story forward, how it's all linked together. And again, it's not perfect because there are some storylines that kind of bleed into the other arcs. But it's just, I figured that would be a good way to format it to keep the conversation flowing. So that's what we're going to do. So we are going to get started with the first arc and the first planet that Andor starts at, and that is the corporate planet Morlana 1. Now, I actually really liked this as a backdrop. I thought it was really dark and gritty. I liked the cantina scene basically right off the bat. I was like, okay, this feels like Star Wars. I'm about it. And some stuff happens on there, and I'm going to let you guys kind of talk about it a little bit because I've been talking now for almost 5 minutes, almost exclusively. So let's chime you guys in. Because I know we have some things to say about the first arc. Not all of it 100% positive, but we're going to start with some positives, right? And so I guess we'll start off with Mez. What was like that, especially that first episode, the first couple scenes, what was going through your mind when you were watching it?
Well, I mean, would it really be a Star Wars property if you walked into a bar and there wasn't some rowdy patron that gives you shit?
Right.
Like, you know, that's just classic. It hits you with it right there. Uh, there's a good amount of obvious, like, covert energy going on. You're not really sure what's happening, but it does a good job laying the groundwork, I think, for who this character is
Hmm.
in Cassian. You know, um, he's not someone that flies off the handle at any provocation, right? He's deliberate. He thinks it through, uh, and then he makes his move, sort of thing. Um, I'm not really sure why it started here,
Hmm.
other than they just chose a random point in his life. I think it's to make the world feel a little bit more alive, where it's not like a grand scheme. It wasn't destiny necessarily. It was just a thing in his life that happened that set off this domino effect, leading to him joining the rebels at
Okay.
the end of it. And I think that is somewhat effective, maybe a little bit confusing, in terms of storyline, but I don't think it really takes away too much from the story. That it's not like all interconnected. Um, I think, having a person just living their life and then stuff happens to them is fine. Is probably good for world building
Hmm.
purposes. Yeah.
Okay. I know, Dom, you have some stuff to say just because that first arc, it did very much seem like it was going in a specific direction, right? That being that he was looking for his sister. He was from the planet Canary, right? And even showed a little bit of that backstory.
Mm.
So I know we discussed it a little bit earlier. I don't know if it was yesterday or today, but do you want to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, when you meet Andor, that's what he's doing. He's looking for his sister from Canary. And so that's like one of the first things that emerges in like the first real scene in the show. And so you're like, oh, okay, we're setting up his goal real early. But that is in fact almost nothing to do with the show.
Yeah.
It's possible that it comes back in season two. Felt a little weird. But I guess it's a case of we have to trust them for season two to make like see if they don't just drop that completely.
Right.
Um, of course, they could be making some grand points with this by saying like people in the empire can get separated and lost, and like it's a million small tragedies happen every day, kind of thing. They could be going with that, but I feel like it would be a little unsatisfying without a little bit more development. Um, and also to piggyback off of some of the things that Joe said,
Yeah. Go for it.
I think that I got a slightly different read on Andor. That he tries to be very calculated, but that there's a beast kept on a chain inside of him, and sometimes it gets let loose.
Yeah.
Um,
Great. Yeah.
and that beast on a chain shows itself when he kills those two people. I don't think he planned on killing those two guards at
Well,
all.
yeah, but he also, it was just an accident,
Yeah,
essentially. But he did
he
have
got too rough
the
with
the
that one
second
guy who
one was
fell
deliberate.
over.
The second one was deliberate to cover the first,
Yeah,
for
Right.
sure.
absolutely.
And
So that was like he was pushed to the wall, to a corner. So yeah, you're right. When he's in a corner, he is a rabid dog.
And
So
like when he was in that bar, there's like that look on his face, like I want to kill you in that moment when that guy
right.
was harassing him in the bar, and like he was on the chain at that point,
Mm.
kept in check.
right. And yeah, I'm with you, Dom. It does kind of feel like the sister storyline and even kind of the Canary storyline as a whole was kind of just an excuse for him to kill the two guards.
Kind of.
Um and
Maybe I kind of have a small theory
okay.
about this, and
Oh,
it may just be a miss in terms of direction, where we kind of got the answer to this, but it didn't feel as impactful
Hmm.
as they were expecting it to be. I mean, push back against us if you want, but it kind of feels like this. His sister is dead. We learn this. I mean, not 100% by any means. There's definitely a chance she comes back in season 2, but his adoptive mother later on in the series tells him straight up, "Your sister's dead. You need to move past this, get over this, look at what's really happening around you." And it's kind of like this character development point where he never truly looked at what the empire was doing on a grand scale, only like small bits of like what he could take from it. Maybe it is meant to be that snap moment of character development where like the scales fall from his eyes, sort of
Okay.
thing. But if that was the case, it didn't really feel like that in the series.
Yeah, and I think that is. We mentioned we have a couple nitpicks. I think that is the one nitpick. Either way, whether it was a failure of fully explaining
Yeah.
what they were going for, like Messerschmitt was saying, or if it was a plot line that was brought up and then they just forgot about it, like how kind of me and Dom think. Either way, that is kind of one of the few nitpicks we have. Um, I think.
In Star Wars, if there's no body, they
Yeah.
got
I agree. I think they're saving it for season 2.
no
But I just
body, no
it's
death.
just that's why I said it's a small theory. Like
Yeah,
maybe that's what they were going for.
and it's totally possible that we come back after, years, however long it takes for season 2 to release, that we come back and we readdress this plot point. But
Mm.
I think the main big thing with Morlana 1 was the big murder, and then him becoming a fugitive, and then that bringing in the corporate on his tail, because that's the first big bad guy, and I think that's obviously the Empire is a big baddie in this show, but I think what separates this show from other Star Wars properties, especially early on, is that the big baddie's just corporate. Like, it's just
Mm.
companies and how corporate works. And I think it's kind of cool that we see a little bit of insight into that through. I feel really bad. I'm blanking on the guy's name, Mister Necktie.
Cyril, yeah. Yeah,
Cyril.
Cyril.
Cyril. Um, we see that very early. I don't know if it's in episode 1 or 2 where he's like super, super hot, ready to go on the tail, and he's like, I need to find Andor. I need to prove myself that he murdered 2 of our people. And his boss is just like, bro, sit down. We can't do anything. We don't want to look bad because the Empire is gonna like cut our funding, or they're gonna see us more. So just pretend it didn't happen.
Also, that
And
guy was an asshole.
Yeah.
He
He
basically said
does
like
he
one of
does
the least
basically
pleasant
say that.
people I've ever met.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's true. And that is the storyline that basically follows through for the first arc, right? Because then Andor escapes Morlana 1 and goes to his home planet of Ferrix. Now, I think we talked about Ferrix a decent amount. We liked the aesthetic of Ferrix. I personally really enjoyed how grimy it felt, how like everyone felt like they were actually a part of the world, like their outfits were dusty, like it felt like good Star Wars and not like the Disney sequel trilogy where everything is just like pristine and clean and like all that. Like I was about it. I liked Ferrix. It reminded me um I mean, funnily enough, it's obviously not Tatooine, but it kind of reminded me of like when you go to in Kotor, when you go to Anchorhead on Tatooine, that it kind of had a similar feeling to that town. Um, and then we were introduced to a couple new characters, and I know Dom specifically likes one of them, being Bix.
Oh yeah, my
Nothing wrong
future
with it.
wife, my
Yeah.
future ex-wife.
Oh yeah, it was pretty funny watching it. I was just like, "Oh man, she's so hot!" Like just having a moment.
I gotta call me out like that.
Hey,
Although if you're watching, yeah.
call him. He's a catch. We promise. But then we also get introduced to Andor's stepmom, who hilariously was played by the same actress who plays Aunt Petunia in Harry Potter in a very different role because she's
Yeah.
like a total and complete bitch in Harry Potter and is like such an awesome character in Andor.
Yeah.
um, but it, I guess this is where we start to see some of the character dynamics, how Andor, or how Cassian starts to interact with the people that he knows, right? And I personally thought it was very interesting. I enjoyed it. Um, I'll, I let Messerschmitt go first last time. Dom, I'm not. I'll let you redeem yourself that you're not just a big simp. I'll let you talk a little bit about the other relationships. I know you liked his best friend as well.
Yeah. I think the one thing that really got driven home to me in these early episodes is that when we meet Andor, he kind of sucks. Andor kind of sucks. Like nobody, like he inspires loyalty in his friends, but they all kind of view him as unreliable, as not being entirely forthright. Nobody really they trust his intentions, but they don't trust his words a lot of the time, including his mom. Um, he's a very complicated person, and that is not something we're used to seeing in Star Wars since someone like Han Solo, which is
Yep,
pretty awesome.
I
I would even
completely
argue
agree.
that they do more to slander Andor early on than even Han Solo, like establishing him as like, yeah, he's not great right now.
Well, especially since George Lucas took out Han shooting Greedo first, like that.
Right.
Like, not to get into that debate in this format, but that did change a lot of his character and softened him up quite a bit. But sorry,
Yes,
we
and
don't
I
have to get
agree.
into that.
But yeah, no. So like at the start of the show when we first meet him, he kind of sucks a little bit,
Right.
but he is doing his best, and it shows in all of his relationships where like he does have loyal friends who care about him. He's got Brasso, like the big sort of salvage worker who that seems to be the main operation of Ferrix is like salvaging old ships,
Mm-hmm.
and every like the whole ecosystem seems to revolve around that, all the little shops and stuff. Um, and then his mom, where again he like lies straight to his mom's face and she calls him out instantly, like she's used to it. Um, and even Bimo, we all love
we
Bimo.
do.
Bimo is best dog. Bimo the droid. But yeah, I think and then obviously he has a very complicated relationship with Bix, who it seems like they used to have a thing, they don't anymore. She's with someone else now.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of complicated emotions up in there. And I don't think either one of them, even by the end of the series, is any closer to figuring out what they mean to each other.
I think that's fair. Mez, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, not too much for Ferrix. I think Dom captured it pretty well.
Okay.
Obviously, the whole Bix and Cassian thing isn't done yet. There's a lot of stuff. He takes most of the important players with him into season 2, and I hope that we do see them because I would like them to explore uh those relationships a little bit more deeply. I don't know if he's gonna have time for it with
Right.
all the other stuff he's gonna be doing, but if they join up with the Rebel Alliance, maybe they'll become somewhat in a like a mirror to the original trilogy where, this ragtag group kind of just forms and then essentially becomes commanders of the
Right.
Rebel Alliance later on. Uh generals, commanders, like, maybe we'll see a bit of a mirror of that in season 2. That'd be cool.
Well, then we
I'm
can.
kind
Oh,
of
sorry.
oh sorry, I was just gonna say I feel like well one thing first, we forgot to mention one character that nobody cares about, Tim. Rip Tim.
Well, yeah, yeah, Tim. I mean, he
Who here
mainly,
shed a tear for Tim? Anybody
So
any
unfortunately,
tears for
Tim
Tim?
is just a plot device. Tim is just a plot device to get, the ball rolling. So,
Well, so the first ball that's rolling is, and was going to transition into the next arc, which is the Aldani raid, right? But the way that happens is Bix contacts. She has the contact with Luthen, who is
yeah.
we not entirely sure at the start, but we're like, okay, this guy's kind of working on the back end for the rebels, right? That's kind of the implication, and you kind of assume that that's what's happening. And he comes into the picture because Bix summons him to buy a starship piece, which again the starship piece doesn't really matter. It's another plot device. It's just there to give Luthen an excuse to come because it's established basically immediately upon meeting Andor that he's not there for the star piece. He's there for Andor himself to recruit him for this special mission. And Tim is the one who kind of, by being that plot device, is the one who kind of forces that to speed up because he's the one who calls the corpos, and the corpos come. There's a firefight. There's like an escape. Blah 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 blah.
Cool set
Corpos
piece.
prove
Is
themselves to not be very effective, to be
right,
honest. Yeah.
and it is a cool set piece. And I do want to shout out to our Scottish boy. He was quite funny.
Yeah.
What was he, Sergeant Musk? I think.
Something like that. Yeah, it's just he had some. He's not a very
Yes,
big
sir.
character, but he has a very distinct accent. He has a very distinct personality, and I hope that him and Cyril get paired up again in season
that'd
two
be...
because they're pretty funny. But this that is kind of the end of
What
the
if they join the ISB and you know how there's always a 1 and 2 in the ISB?
yeah.
I mean, that'd be pretty great, right?
This is kind of where the corpos or the corporation itself kind of goes away as the villain. Not entirely, because Cyril does have more to do. And I think he gets fired from the corporation, right? Because his boss was
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck are you doing? You caused a firefight on a planet when I specifically told you not to."
I don't even know if it gets that far.
Bunch of people die, and
I
you
think
didn't
it's
catch the
like
person you're going for.
Empire essentially steps in and
That's true.
takes over immediately, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it's the Empire, but specifically the ISB, which is what, like the CIA NSA equivalent,
I guess
essentially.
Imperial
NSA
Security
probably.
Bureau, I think.
What?
Like
In,
Imperial Security or like
Yeah,
intelligence.
so maybe like I guess
Bureau.
the NSA or the FBI, like
Yeah.
the
maybe
Imperial
FBI.
version of that. But this is they kind of are taking a back seat and doing research on the back end and trying to connect dots that only one person sees, being what
Deidre.
Deidre.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's awesome. We'll talk. We'll gush about her plenty, but that's kind of taking a back end because what's cooking now is, I would argue, the most important arc, or maybe not the most important, but the most suspenseful. Right. Like that is where Luthen finally tells Andor, and it's a little bit of a bait and switch because I think everyone watching is probably like, oh, he's there to recruit him for the for the Rebel Alliance, right? He's like, oh, you want to fight these guys, you want to fight these bastards for real. I think is what he said, and it's like, oh, he's recruiting him to be a part of the Alliance. No, he is recruiting him for a secret mission as a mercenary and essentially kind of a fall guy. Even afterwards, he's totally willing to just like kill him after. Oh, sorry, I had a little bit of a visual glitch. But it's like I said, it's a little bit of bait and switch. So we now go to the next planet, which is Aldani. Introduces a couple new characters and some absolutely gorgeous set pieces. And I'd argue it starts a little slow for that first episode, but once it gets revved up, it revs up pretty hard. And we went to Dom first, so we'll go to Mez with the introduction of all these new characters. Did you have a favorite? I think I know.
Are you? I mean, are you counting Luthen in there, or?
Yeah. I'll count Luthen in
It's
there.
like it might be Luthen, but for the ones on Aldani, it's gonna be the kid,
Okay.
Karis, I think.
The one with the manifesto.
The Manifesto kid, yeah.
Yeah.
He was great. I really liked out of Luthen like you were saying, the ruthlessness that he brings to the rebel side of the fight, because that's not something that you see a lot in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's
But
usually the
it
good
makes
versus
perfect
bad,
sense.
right?
Yeah. It makes perfect sense that, when you're fighting against this gigantic bureaucratic monster that is the Empire, that you would have to use a lot of underhanded tactics, and they never really got into much of that before. Maybe a little bit in Rogue One, but I mean, even then, they were very much painted as just the good guys that do good things for good reasons.
Well,
Uh,
to add on to, not to interrupt you, but to add on to that, within Rogue One, I mean, you basically get one single scene of him of Cassian basically murdering someone after doing like a trade when he's on like a spy mission,
right.
and after that, it's just good. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's good versus evil again. So you get like a little hint of it, but I definitely agree with you that this show expands upon that very much so with a character like Luthen, who is like not a good person at all, and
Yeah.
Andor himself is
Is
not a good person.
dedicated. I mean, as he says, he's like basically sells his soul.
Yeah.
It's like he's dedicated to the cause, no matter what path that leads him down. Murder, sabotage, anything, as long as he can meet this lofty, lofty goal he's trying to set. And you got to do some crazy things for that to happen. So Aldani is the craziest thing, other than like,
A lot of crazy stuff that happens.
yeah. I mean, I think this is the craziest thing in the show.
It's a
Really,
suicide mission that you,
it's like you could maybe argue the prison break, but like this is insane
This is
what
the one
they're
that
trying to
sends
pull off.
ripples out throughout the galaxy.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, I mean, this is it's the biggest. It's a raid for an imperial payroll, which
The
if
heist.
yeah, like who doesn't like heists? Heists are
yeah.
like have been popular in media since the beginning.
Mm.
So like it's a good set piece for that, but it's also a good example of bringing things down to scale a little bit. And I think we talked about this when we talked about Kenobi on the Pointy Stick podcast on Claymore's channel, where we kind of wanted more of these kind of scenes where it's Kenobi talking with the rebels and like getting to know them a little bit more, so
Yep.
that when Wade dies and the random bitch is just like Wade, and you're like, I don't know who Wade is.
Yeah, that's a meme in our house. Kind of like when we were watching that and just wait, no! Like who?
Yeah, and I'll let you take the lead on this part, Dom. But I will introduce the fact that this show kind of did what we wanted in Kenobi, and with that, I'll pass the torch over to you to kind of explain what we mean by that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like in Kenobi, we were again. It was who are you people?
Right.
Like we get introduced to this group, like Underground Railroad group, but we never spend enough time with them for us to care about them. Like it's so rushed when Kenobi runs into this group. Like you meet this guy, and in the same conversation that he says hello, he talks about his dead wife that we're all of a sudden supposed to care about.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
No, that's not how this works. And I think they do mention Wade's name one time in passing on the way to the mission.
Yeah, like, hey, that's Wade.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just like, oh, that's who Wade is on the second watch through. And like we were saying after watching, like, wouldn't it be great if like they shared a meal, if they had spent any time whatsoever getting to know these people, if we were supposed to care about them dying. They do that in All
Mhm.
Done. I think possibly for some people, I was fine with it, but for some people it might be too slow. It might have taken too long in the run up to the mission. But I thought it was great. Not only establishing Andor with the group in like the prairie or wherever they are getting ready for the mission, but also my favorite character from Aldani, Lieutenant Gorn. I thought he was great.
Hmm.
The Imperial Lieutenant Saboteur
Yeah.
guy on
Yeah.
the inside. Um, I thought he was fantastic as well, setting up his role in the mission, kind of how like firmly he's embedded. He's like really well respected amongst the Imperials. They never see it coming. Um, yeah, honestly, all of Aldani is great
Yeah,
for that reason. You actually get the build up. You care about these people, and when some of them, well, we're spoiling,
yeah, we're spoiling him.
most of them die during the course of the mission. You feel it a lot more than wait, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, some of it you see coming. I mean, I knew the kid was dead.
Oh
Of
yeah,
course.
I knew it. I knew
Yeah.
he was gonna
Well,
die. But
it,
like they did set up they talked about his philosophy. It does make sense within like the whole scheme of the universe that they're in. It was even fairly decent what he had to say about that kind of stuff.
I
Uh
I think he
And
he's
had
you
not
to
the
love
most
it too. Like
charismatic
he plays it
kid,
back
but
to
he's
himself
like,
later.
yeah, no, I like that playback, you
Yeah.
know? It feels good. It feels like kind of like the main character isn't the character that does everything in the show.
You need
He's
both.
not the main driving force behind everything that's going to happen. There are
No.
other characters in this show that have importance to the overall plot, and I like that. Yeah.
In a rebellion, you need both. You need the Luthans and you need the kids. Your
Yeah.
dream.
yeah.
Yep.
You know, without both of them, you can't make it.
Well, and I think specifically, it feels kind of shitty to say, but I think Cassian himself needed the kid to die because he was listening to all these ideas, and I mean, he never disagrees with them, but he also is like, it's not really my fight, and it's not until he sees the kid dying and kind of putting that into practice that he starts kind of going down that road. And I think what the kid ended up um, wanting to give him his manifesto before he died, and presumably Andor then reads it, right? So I think it's huge for his character development. Um, but that being said, they spent all this time setting up these characters, setting up the relationships, so that when the set piece actually goes down, super high tension. I was invested the entire way, and then when things start to go to shit and it becomes a firefight, like it feels like the stakes are real. Then that's also I have to mention that it's kind of set up with just the most amazing backdrop that I've seen in Star Wars when they're flying through the
Right.
Eye of Aldani, and like it's all the lights and colors and shit. And it's just like, dude, this is a feast for the eyes, and it feels earned because they set everything up before, and you just kind of get to sit there and be like, oh, yes,
And it gives some unique flavor to this planet, and
right,
it's just like, yeah, man, I mean, that's what Star Wars is supposed to be about, right? Like
Yeah.
going off on wild adventures to crazy worlds, you know.
And it proves the show's not all politicking.
right.
Although the politicking is also quite good.
And we
Oh
will
yeah.
get there. I have not forgotten about Miss Mothma. I figure we're going to finish the Aldani raid and maybe even talk about how, well, maybe not, maybe, I'm just going to say it. After the Aldani raid, they make away with some of the payroll. They don't get it all because everything went to shit and they didn't have time.
I mean,
Um,
no plan ever survives contact with the enemy, right?
right. Um, but they get off planet and basically only Andor, I'm so bad with these names. One of you has the list up, right?
Vel,
Vel
like
Vel,
and then the other shady
Cinta,
dude. Oh,
Cinta,
yes,
Cinta, and then the other shady
oh,
dude,
and
uh,
Arvel Skeen.
Keen,
Skeen.
yeah.
So this is where they go to a planet with a doctor to try to save the kid. He fails, which is where Andor gets the manifesto. He's also given the money that he was promised. We did kind of skip over the fact that the rest of the group weren't getting paid. So there was a little bit of animosity behind that. But we do get a good scene of Skeen talking to Andor, and essentially he's like, hey, they're busy trying to save this kid. Let's just take the money and run. Andor murks him and then takes his money and runs.
Yeah, I
but
was about to say he wasn't given the money.
Well, he was taking his money.
yeah,
He left a large chunk.
he left the remainder that was promised for the rebellion, right? But he
Yeah.
took his money, ran back to Ferrix, paid all of his debts, and then got the fuck out of Dodge and went to a beach and hung out until stuff happens.
That was a brutal pistol shot
Mm-hmm.
to Skeen's face. Like, I didn't see that coming, to be honest.
Neither did
He
And
didn't either.
yeah, no.
I.
He thought he had a read on Cassian, and that was
The
the
wrong
wrong
read.
move. That was the wrong idea. Yeah. Um, but yeah, that was a wonderful scene.
Yeah.
As brutal as it was.
Um, but this is where I will start to talk more about Deidre because we mentioned her before. She's a little bit in the background. She was seeing all these dots connected, and she was trying to get the people around her and her boss to agree with her. But after Aldani, that was kind of the last or the spark that kind of lit the flame that she was able to convince her boss that hey, maybe I'm right. And I know we all have thoughts on Deidre. I thought she was so good. I thought her
Yeah.
performance was amazing. I thought her character was intimidating. It's honestly, I think I even said it when we were watching. I'm like, I wanted this for Riva. Like I did not like Riva in Kenobi at all, and it was a combination of the performance and her characterization and what she was doing, right? It was the show was more insisting how cool she was.
Mm.
Deidre, not a Sith, not doesn't kill anyone throughout the show. All she does, she's a, for lack of a better, I mean, I know it's like the FBI and it's a government job, but she's basically a corporate person, right? But she's so intimidating with how she talks to people throughout the show and how driven she is to find Andor and to find the links to for this rebellion. I She was like honestly she was kind of perfect for me. I don't know
Yeah.
about you guys, but I'll start with Dom.
No, she was incredible. I mean, basically, her and Cyril together put the human face to the Empire, the Imperial officers. That in other Star Wars properties, they're just a jackboot.
Mm,
They just exist to be evil under Grand Moff Tarkin or Darth Vader or Kylo Ren, whoever, General Hux. Um, in this one, you see how they work. You see the the politics that happens behind the scenes, the backstabbing, the you see it all, and it humanizes them, and it also it turns them into a more earthbound bad guy, if you will. Like they seem like an organization that could exist here.
right. No, absolutely.
It's weird feeling like seeing her position and sort of wanting to root for her
Yeah, kind of at the
in
beginning.
climbing the ladder of her job
Yeah,
and also really rooting against her goals.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it was just very interesting. I thought they did a good job
yeah,
um
Well, and
treading that line.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it was the scariest thing about her and the Empire in the show is that they're actually competent. Like even her boss, it like
Mm,
encourages her and recognizes her talent, and but then also with the other hand warns her not to get too crazy. But like that's all like being a supportive boss when you would think like most of the villains like Darth Vader are like, oh, you fucked up, die, right? And
mhm.
I love Darth Vader. I love hey, you fucked up, die. Don't fail. You're in charge now, Admiral Piet, right? Like that's all great, but like, and that's scary in its own right. But the fact that the ISB actually feels competent is very scary. It feels like they actually can quell a rebellion before it gets started if the things align and they do find out the information that they need.
yeah.
Anything else to
Yeah.
add to that?
They are still
I mean,
incredibly fat and proud, though, at the
Oh,
same time,
of course, of course, of course.
which is ultimately probably going to be their downfall.
I mean, the only thing to add is that I would probably watch a show centered around some of
Yeah.
centered even more around some of that. Like
Hmm.
I,
The
I
Cyril spinoff.
okay, maybe let's pump the brakes on Cyril a little bit.
Okay, wait,
Cyril
wait,
was
wait.
a funny character,
Before we
but
pump the brakes on Cyril's, I just, we don't have to talk about it. Cyril's mom.
Oh, Cyril's mom.
okay, well, she maybe needs her own show. I don't know. Like, I mean, you end up feeling bad for Cyril at like,
Absolutely.
you're like,
Like he sucks,
man,
but you're still like, oh,
you
but that
suck, but
sucks.
yeah, you don't really deserve this
Yeah.
sort of thing. Uh, he does get a little bit trod on a little bit too much. It feels like
Yeah.
he was just trying to do his job, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
He's trying to live up to his mom's expectations.
yeah, I guess that just like you said, it humanizes him,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like,
It explains why he was such a firebrand. So he's got that mom behind him, constantly nagging about his promotion.
yeah,
Yeah.
not to not to let things slip, sort of thing.
But then we move on. We'll get to the next arc, and I promise we are going to talk about Mon Mothma. I kind of want to get Andor's arcs out of the way, with the ISB in the background, because Mon Mothma and her stuff, it is very much connected, but it feels like its own show. So we'll get there. Um, Neamos, the paradise planet that he basically escapes to and wants to mess around with and just live his life, right?
Face
Yeah.
Miami.
Yes, yeah,
I mean, basically, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised. I did read an article. I don't remember where it was actually shot, but it very well might be. Um, the planet itself, fairly insignificant. It's more so to set up him going to jail. Now, I know, Dom, you weren't particularly happy about how it goes, so I'll let you introduce it.
I just felt it was a bit convenient, a little too forced. Like I understood what they were going for. That like in the Empire, anything could get you thrown into prison. They don't care about you. But at the same time, it was like he literally did nothing wrong,
Right.
and like they could like he's the kind of person who would do things wrong. And like I don't know. They if they needed him to be in prison, I felt like they could have done it a bit cleaner. But it's a nitpick. Honestly, it doesn't matter that much.
So it's kind of funny because when we discussed it, after it happened, I don't think you said that to me, and so I kind of disagreed with you a little bit more with the context of him basically being willing to do bad things, like he maybe should have done something bad to get in. I am with you. I personally don't think him going to jail for that long for nothing was bad, but it could be. I agree with you that it could be better with
Yeah.
with that kind of new information that you brought in, because I do definitely understand the point they were trying to make. I mean, Luthen had said it multiple times that they're like so fat that they don't, or Andor said it too, that they were so fat and that they don't care and that nothing really matters. And so in that case, he's just like a number. But
Yeah, it is a human misery machine, the
yeah,
Empire.
kind of
Or
feel
yeah.
it's. I have mixed feelings about it, but here's what I will say: that scene essentially got an emotional response from us, saying that's fucking bullshit,
Yeah.
and because it is, they
That's
used
fair.
trumped up charges. He shouldn't have even been there. Like, and he never should have gotten like pointed out as a rebel
right.
or doing suspicious or seditious activity based off what he was doing. But I think that is kind of the point. This is the point in the show where the Empire is being a jackboot.
Yeah.
Um, and they did a lot of work in the show to humanize the Empire in some ways, but like Empire's too big. Some bad shit's gonna happen here or there. And again, it's also just he's living his life and something happens to him.
Mm.
It's not an
I did
effect.
like. Oh, sorry.
It's not a domino. It's just
Yeah.
a random occurrence, which is just I think kind of, the point of the show is that yeah, this can happen anywhere. It does happen anywhere. How many of the other people in prison do you think just were like strolling down the street in a weird way and got, you
Yeah.
sort of thing. So like I do think that that's Yes, it's convenient. Yes, it felt a little bit dumb, but yes, it was effective at getting an emotional response.
One thing I did like about the arrest, though, was the inclusion of the K2SO
Yeah.
model droid
Yes.
being the one to pick him up and choke him.
Yeah, just a
Yes.
little throwback.
Because just because like in Rogue One, there's always friction. Like Andor and K2SO work together, but you can sense
Ah.
Andor doesn't really like or trust K2SO fully.
Mm. Good
And
point.
being held up by his neck by that specific model of droid and then being sent to prison for no reason would be plenty of reason. And I suspect that if we meet K2SO in the next season, it's going to give us even more reason why he would not fully love that model of droid.
That
Right.
is a great point. I did not think about
I didn't
that. I
think
was
about that either.
just
Yeah.
excited to see the droid because
Yeah.
honestly, I really like the design of
Yeah.
that
Right.
droid.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, so his arrest leads him to go to jail, and I don't feel like there's particularly too much we need to talk about in the jail because it's a lot of plotting and planning, and it's you kind of know where it's going to go.
Mm.
Other than
Oh, Kino Loy.
Oh, Yeah.
yes, a very good performance by an actor we all love.
He finally gets a good Star Wars turn.
Yeah.
He was Snoke, and that sucked, but it's not his fault.
Nope.
But Kino Loy is dope, and I hope we see more of him.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're gonna see more of him. You
Yeah,
know?
because it did end very tragically with the escape, where he's like, "I can't swim," so it's very possible that he didn't make it.
Maybe
Um,
they're doing some Marvel bullshit here, because like Andy Serkis was in Marvel as
Mm.
like just some random mercenary guy who was behind the scenes and would pop up in like all sorts of Star Wars or Marvel movies. So maybe
I
he's gonna pop up in some non-Andor property sometime down the line.
I heard a pretty funny fan theory that he was actually Snoke.
Oh right, that doesn't say much.
That doesn't make any
It
sense.
doesn't make any sense at all. It's stupid.
That's funny though.
But I mean, the main point, other than just showing Kino Loy as a good character and like showing the plight of Andor in jail, was showing the cruelty of the jailing system, the cruelty of the Empire with how they kept the prisoners in check with the electrocuted floors that would kill you if you stepped on them.
Mm.
And then the one key moment where they all figure out that no one's escaping, they just get transferred from one part of the prison to another, and that basically just keeps happening, and they cycle out people, and that no one actually gets to go home. And that's what sparks the overall breakout. And the breakout scene was, I mean, it was really well done. I think we were all riveted by it, but I know Dom, you mentioned being not to keep throwing you under the bus for being the one who's disappointed in little things and nitpicky, but you mentioned that you felt like it was a little bit of a missed opportunity because
Oh, I wanted his squad. I wanted him to squad up with the guys in his on his level, but so many of them maybe that's a different nitpick, but that was one thing that occurred to me is that could have been fun to like have an origin story of like the rebel A team coming together in prison and then going out and doing cool stuff together.
Mm.
I mean, that could still happen with a different group, but like the people from Ferrix.
right,
But yeah, I was hoping for something like that. Um, yeah, or just Kino Loy. I just wanted more Kino Loy.
right. Um, and in all honesty, I don't feel like we need to really talk unless you guys want to talk, say more about the prison. I kind of feel like it's
I think there's one
It's
quick
pretty
thing.
yeah,
self-explanatory. I mean, yeah, I
Just
don't think
like
there's a lot of underlying.
I mean, with Kino, there is the story of the guy who he was kind of bought in
Yeah.
at first. Like,
Hmm.
I have this long on my sentence. I will keep my nose clean. I will play by the rules and I will get out of here because that's how this works. And then he finds out that the Empire doesn't play by those rules. And it kind of
Yeah.
reinforces how an organization like the Empire can function. It's because they trick people like Kino into thinking that they play by the rules.
mm,
Mm.
And
Hmm.
then once that illusion is shattered, that's when he snaps.
Okay,
And I thought that was cool.
I agree.
The
I
first
agree
body
completely.
entity. We get to see what they're making at the
Yeah.
end. So
Right,
yeah, we
which
all. I think we all kind of knew that it had something to do with the big project that
Yeah.
the Empire was undertaking.
Yeah.
Um,
spoilers, it was the Death Star.
what?
I thought
I
it was
don't think
moisture
it's.
evaporators.
I don't think it's necessarily missed opportunity because, like, what message would you be sending? But it kind of felt like when he mentioned the game that they play, that they were going to lean a little bit more into that sort of thing.
Mm,
Uh, and they never really did, which, maybe to the benefit of the show. But it kind of like reminded me a little bit of like reading Ender's Game, and that was sort of one of the things that happened in Ender's Game. And I liked that part of the book. The show didn't really capture the same feeling for me, or the movie, whatever.
mm,
Uh, so when it was mentioned, I was kind of excited, but then yeah, obviously that was not the point of the prison
right.
scenes.
Yeah.
Well, and then the prison escape, he manages to find a ship with two aliens that kind of help him because they hate the Empire too. And that leads us into Andor's final arc. And like I said, we'll talk about Mon Mothma after. But he finds out that his stepmom passed away, and he decides to go back to Ferrix, despite knowing that he shouldn't. And at this time, Ferrix has been completely taken over by the ISB. They set up a base camp of operations. They've tortured multiple people. I mean, there was a scene where they even captured and tortured Bix, and kind of a.
Good after that.
I'm actually kind of glad. So, like, in a kind of horrendous way, but I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't try to come up with a sound, because like the way she gets tortured by like the screams of some
Yes.
creature that's being tortured, and it's like, and it's really psychologically tormenting. I'm glad that they didn't try to make a sound for us to hear, because I don't think it would ever live up to that kind of expectation. We would
Yep.
never feel that kind of dread. So the fact that they just like put it on her, made everything silent, and then just kind of showed her reacting to it, I actually really enjoyed that.
Yep.
And she pulled that off without it being cheesy, and that's
Mm-hmm.
hard.
Oh yeah.
That is pretty hard. I think no matter what sound you played, if you put her reaction, it would have been too cheesy. Like
Yeah.
that was about the only way they could have done it and had it be believable.
Yeah. And after he comes back for the funeral, they play the holographic speech of his mom, essentially the start of the rebellion, right? She gives this real heartened speech about these imperial bastards, and I like I said yesterday, there was actually the original cut. She was supposed to drop an F bomb in there, talking about the Empire, and Disney was like, no, which is unfortunate, because it would have been hilarious to see Aunt Petunia getting the rebellion started by talking about these fucking imperial bastards, right? Like that would have been incredible. Um, was there anything about that scene that stood out to either of you?
I mean, I was kind of, as like maybe by this point in the show I shouldn't have been, but I was a little surprised that it wasn't Cassian that essentially fired the first shot of the
Mm,
rebellion. You know what I mean? He wasn't in the square. He was off doing rogue stuff, trying to save his friends. He he was not front and center.
He's a
Um,
pragmatic man.
I know, and it's like it just makes so much more sense for him to be that way. But that is not how Star Wars a lot of times sets up
True.
its character arcs.
right.
And I think it was more impactful this way, obviously, and it was better for it. I was just surprised.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, Ferrix is the beginning of Andor's rebellion. But in the grand theater of the galaxy, I'm not sure it matters all that much to the Empire.
mm,
You know? Like,
I
I'm
guess
sure
we'll
Aldani was
see.
a much bigger deal to them.
Sure. I mean, I guess we'll see though, because season 2 will make it a little bit more clear. But Luthen was there too and saw the whole thing.
Oh, dude.
Um,
maybe it's not the right time, but that thing in space with Luthen before that.
Oh, the tractor beam.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, that was a cool scene.
that was cool too.
Well, so I mean, I feel like again we've like the prison sequence, like the finale on Ferrix is fairly self-explanatory. Again, it's mostly about the speech and rising of the people up for the rebellion. So we can kind of move on to Luthen because I was kind of saving that as his own thing too because of not only that scene that was really cool, but I believe wasn't that when he was on his way back to Coruscant from seeing Saw Gerrera, right? Where he talks to Saw Gerrera and essentially lets him know that he's going to sacrifice the other rebel faction for the good of the rebellion, and it's like Saw Gerrera doesn't have a whole lot to do. He kind of just has that cameo and is kind of just there to be crazy, like he was in Rogue One. A little bit subdued from Rogue
Oh,
One.
much less than in Rogue One.
um, but it was basically there again to illustrate Luthen and the ruthlessness. He's willing to literally sacrifice an entire squadron of rebel fighters and people just so that the Empire doesn't know that he has information, which is
Mole, yeah.
yeah, which is insane. I mean, it is the right choice, but it's also an absolutely brutal choice that most Star Wars characters that have been introduced who are light side, for lack of a better word, would never do that. They'd be like, no, we'll find a way. You know, like that's
Or they might like other characters might make that choice at first, but then have a change of heart and come to save them. You know,
right.
that's very Star Wars.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's kind of it's kind of also a cool mirror. I guess not a mirror,
foil.
foil to in that meeting. He essentially gets Saw Gerrera into a point where he has all the power to kill him, and basically chooses not to do so to prove his point that he is to be trusted. And Cassian chooses the opposite way to gain trust from Luthen,
Mm,
and the end, right? Where he puts Luthen in the position of power to choose whether to kill him not, or to, you know, deem him a useful piece of the rebellion. Kind of a good, light dark side situation. Yin yang maybe more
mm.
is a better kind of word for it.
Yeah.
I thought that was just neat.
No, I agree, and I think it's just it keeps going to show that every scene that has Luthen in it, whether he's in the shit or if he's back on his shop playing the bit part,
Mm.
every scene with Luthen in it was gold. It was must watch, and Stellan Skarsgård is amazing. I actually am kind of upset that we haven't talked about more of the performances. We mentioned
There's so much to get to in this show.
I know
It's
there
like
is so much to
kind
get
of
to,
crazy.
and I mentioned I wanted this to be half an hour, 45 minutes at most.
Yeah, no
It's
way.
been 58 fucking minutes, and we still haven't gotten to Mon Mothma yet. Fuck me, but like the actor performances for Stellan Skarsgård, for Diego Luna,
I think across the board, honestly, like
yeah,
even the supporting cast, like Luthen's lieutenant.
mm,
Let me see,
Oh yeah, what are some people?
Clea.
Yeah.
Like all of the politicking, the underhanded little like the secret notes and signs and everything, like it all felt real.
right.
I think.
The
I
Um,
only
don't.
character I thought maybe did only an okay job was Tim, but he's not around long enough to even
I
like.
think there
yeah,
was maybe one other one. Was Melshi
Yeah, he was fine.
he was fine, but he
They had
wasn't
to
like
include him. He was in Rogue One.
I know, but it it wasn't as strong as. It's not even that it wasn't strong. It just wasn't as strong as the rest of the cast.
Yeah.
You know.
um, but here we are finally. I think we can finally talk about Mon Mothma and her little arc because this is the one that I was talking about that doesn't really fit into Andor's arc because it kind of the scenes show up basically throughout every other arc. It's stretched over the other ones, and
Well,
that is
Luthen's the only connecting thread.
that too.
Yeah.
But Mon Mothma is a character that hardcore Star Wars fans should know immediately, and non-hardcore Star Wars fans will be able to be like, if they're shown or told like, oh, that's who that character is, they'd be like, oh yeah. Um,
From Return of the Jedi.
yes, many or no, not just Return of the Jedi. She was in A New Hope.
Oh, she was?
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought Many Bothans was only. I thought that was the second one. Oh, never mind. Second Death Star.
What is a Bothan, by the way?
It's a race.
Yeah,
It's an alien race.
Have we seen them?
Not in like a
think they
main
showed them in
role.
Rebels, maybe.
Yeah, and like they're in a bunch of video games. They might be in the background of some of the original trilogy as well.
I can't picture them, so I mean,
They kind of look like dogmen, sort of.
okay.
Dog people.
Yeah. But Mon Mothma, the what if these scenes, as much as I have a soft spot for the prequel trilogy, if these scenes were in the prequel trilogy, they would have been boring. If they were written by George Lucas, they would have been boring. But I thought they were awesome. Like they weren't perfect. They weren't like they didn't carry the show or anything. But in these moments where things were more subdued and it was more talking, it felt almost like Game of Thronesy.
There's lots of subtext.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of missed that a little bit, if I'm being honest. Like when Game of Thrones was really good, and it was really just this political thriller essentially. Like bringing a little bit of that to Star Wars in a way that actually was done well was kind of nice.
Yeah.
You know, I I don't know. I think if the prequels were written in this manner,
Oh yeah, that'd
we
be
would
so much better.
all see them as in a better light.
Yeah, 100%. And
George is great at ripping off Joseph Campbell, but when it comes to political thrillers, maybe leave it to other people.
yeah, and you see the evolution of her character too, right? And because she mentions at the beginning that she was the one funding Luthen. But money is starting to become tight because the Empire's noose is around her is kind of tightening. They're starting to pay a little bit more attention. It's harder for her to get her money from her accounts. So a lot of that is figuring out how she can get around the Empire's eye, and it basically leads into her a very sophisticated senator who has lots of pull and is for all intents and purposes a really good person, essentially making a deal with a crime lord in order to keep funding the rebellion, which is another example of not everything being squeaky clean. Like if you're gonna overthrow a government, you got to get your hands dirty, and she's willing to do that. And she's at first hesitant to even talk to this character, but then she eventually does, and his terms are kind of horrendous. He's like, I want your daughter to marry my son. And she's at first is like, no fucking way. And eventually, like, I think it was one of the final scenes. It's wasn't it the wedding? Like it was an actual wedding, right?
No. It was just a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where she is actually considering, for lack of a better term, selling off her daughter in order to fund the overthrowing of the Empire, which is
And I mean, there's
crazy.
weird layers in there too, because like technically, weirdly, and I don't know if this is good or not, good writing, but like her daughter is essentially obsessed with the
Old ways.
Chandrilan, culture,
Mm-hmm.
and arranged marriages are part of that, and so her daughter is like kind of bought into this whole thing. it's not maybe explicitly said that her daughter wants to be put into an arranged marriage, but it's kind of implied
Mm,
because of the other like old ways that she's into,
mm,
actively participates in, and kind of is like mad at her mom for not really supporting that.
mm.
So it's a super weird situation.
Complicated.
Yeah, and and like home life is just not good for Mon Mothma.
Oh yeah, she also
No.
sells out her husband.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's that scene in the car
yeah.
where she's like blaming him for gambling,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she
and
doesn't
she
sell
has
him
no reason
out.
to. No, she has no reason to think that, but she's just doing a performance for the driver, who's an ISB mole,
Yes.
and
Oh,
so that way it
you
helps
think?
explain where the money went with
Yeah.
their whole alibi.
Oh, you think she was? Oh, I actually thought she was just actually mad at him for that.
No,
Oh no 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 no! That was a lie. I
performance.
think that's like 100% a lie. A
Yeah.
cover. A cover.
Really? Because it feels like that's political weight that they're going to try to swing at her in the next season because that gets reported to the ISB
Well, yeah, because
as
that's the
as a
point.
tool, as a lever to like control her.
Well, sure,
You,
but I think in that case, that's why she goes to a crime lord, right? So it's kind
mm.
of a like giving the ammo that you know is going to hurt you versus the much bigger
It's gonna
fucking
take you down.
Oh, see,
tactical
I like
nuke.
that because like I did not interpret it that way, but that's super interesting.
Yeah,
She's a
Um,
player.
yeah,
it's
that's cool.
I can't wait to see, and I'm sure we'll get it in season 2, how she transitions from senator to being in like an actual
General.
rebel general, right? Like
Mhm.
that's going to be really interesting. And I think we've kind of come to the end of like our arc discussion, so we can kind of just finish up with some more high level stuff and with kind of what we hope season 2 brings. But I know for me, like yeah, I love Andor, yeah, I love Luthen. I can't wait to see more of that storyline. But honestly, the thing I'm most intrigued by is how Mon Mothma truly gets to where she is in A New Hope.
Mhm.
Mm, yeah, I'd like to see what happens with the Ferrix bunch,
Hmm?
and I kind of expect them to all die, the ones he takes with him,
Ooh,
because that would set him up for Rogue One, being kind of a loner who doesn't like working with others,
ooh, maybe
Yeah,
and so like everybody around him dies, and so yeah.
I can
that would
see that.
suck.
It would suck, but I could see it.
Yeah,
Mez?
uh, man. I guess. I mean, I'm excited for those two, but honestly, I gotta know how Luthen's
Mm,
story arc ends because you don't see him in the original Star Wars, obviously.
Mm-mm.
I hope it doesn't
I
end.
don't. That doesn't mean he's dead.
I don't want him to be dead.
Doesn't mean he's dead, but I think no matter how his arc ends, it's gonna be dramatic.
I know. He's gonna die.
Like I hope it's at least as dramatic as his scene on the bridge, which we did talk about, and is an incredible scene. Um,
With the scene with
With his mole.
the informant.
with the
Yeah,
mole,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh god, I love that scene.
as
Yeah.
an
That
incredible scene.
monologue.
Oh yeah, where he's essentially, lays it all out there. He's like, I am sacrificing everything, every piece of my soul
Mm,
to
mhm.
this rebellion, and unfortunately, you are too.
Yeah. Like I'm not letting you
um,
go. You're fucked. You're in it with me, bro.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, I want to see something like that again.
Okay.
Potentially even higher drama. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final notes, whether it's favorite character, favorite scene, just anything you want to bring up that we might not have picked up on, Mez?
Mm, oh man, it's a big show, man.
It is. It is a big show. It really is.
I mean, keep up with the political stuff. I want to see this. You know, the rebellion still needs a structure. It's still very, very formless at this point. So seeing some of the structure come together, having that be written in the same way as this political drama,
Mm,
seeing, like wheeling and dealing, trying to get people on your side, trying to establish this hierarchy, goals for the rebellion. How some of that might be interesting to see. It depends on how it's executed, but I think that could be interesting for Mon to kind of drive.
Mm.
It's not going to be Cassian, obviously. It might be Luthen. It might be Mon. Could be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
I
Yeah.
feel like Mon Mothma is more hearts and minds, and Luthen is more brass tacks.
Right.
Yep.
So I'd expect Luthen to be doing that.
Dom Smash, exact same question.
I'm just glad that we have Star Wars for adults.
Yep, me too.
Star Wars that isn't primarily driving toy sales.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it's a good show, and it doesn't seem to care about all that other stuff, and I love that.
Yeah, and for me, I'm kind of in the same vein. I said it to you the other day that I feel like this is the first Star Wars property since like the Knights of the Old Republic games when I was a kid that I'm really actually truly stoked on.
Oh.
Like I enjoyed Mandalorian for what it was. Do I think it was revolutionary? No, I thought it was good, but I also, for a Star Wars story, thought it was fairly generic. But this, I don't feel the same way at all. I feel like this is like a 9
I,
or a 10 out of 10. Like this is
I
this
know
is
we
what I
were.
want from Star Wars going forward.
It's so funny because we were so apprehensive about it right at the beginning.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
You know, we're like, oh shit, is this
Well, we
gonna?
just come off of Obi-Wan and Book of Boba Fett.
yeah.
I mean, and there were good elements, but it's just like there was a poison in some of those.
Well, and I remember being like, I was like, oh, I'm actually excited for Book of Boba Fett, and it was kind of bad.
Very
And
middling.
it was
It's
kind
mid.
it was kind of bad, and then just became Mandalorian again.
Mm.
And that was the best part of it.
Yeah, and then Kenobi, I disliked it more than you two did, but I didn't think it was terrible, but I didn't think it was good. I thought it was the only parts that were good were Ewan McGregor, Little Leia, and then like the few scenes with him and like the one scene with him and Hayden Christensen. Like
Dueling, yeah, back in the past.
that was the
That was
good of
cool.
Kenobi. Other than
Yeah.
that, I thought Kenobi was kind of not great. This, even the bad moments are so fucking minor that I don't care. I want more of it. I want this going forward. I want this writing style going forward. I want this tone going forward. I know that there's some stuff going online, especially if you read forums or Reddit, where there's one camp that's super about it, and then there's this other camp who's like, no, this doesn't need to define Star Wars. I like it being more majestic. I don't get it. I don't understand how you could possibly not think that this is the best Star Wars property that Disney has come out with.
Yeah.
I think those people are crazy. I am firmly in the camp of this is the best Disney Wars property by far.
If
I think
Tony Gilroy replaced Dave Filoni as sort of the head of
yeah,
Star Wars TV moving forward, I wouldn't be sad.
like I love the Star Wars prequels too, but I think this is an overall better product than any of the three prequel
It
movies
is.
as well.
It
So,
is, yeah.
um,
It is more competent
yeah,
for sure.
and
Um,
I know people might want more Jedi and maybe more mysticism. I'm okay with that as long as it has
Leave it
this
in.
same tone.
Yeah.
It needs to have this kind of tone. Like Star Wars, I feel like is best when you can take it seriously. I feel like the original trilogy you can take seriously as films. Like, yeah, there's some silliness with Yoda where he's being a old little gremlin on Dagobah, but like it's not for kids other than maybe the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. It's they're just movies. Like that's what they were. They were there to entertain the masses. They weren't there to sell toys at first. And I want more of this. I want more adult, like you said, more adult Star Wars.
no, I think that's good. I think that's the note to end on right there.
Okay, guys. Well, um, just went about double the length that I
Double,
wanted
yeah.
it
Oh, yeah.
to.
I mean, I told you, under an hour is gonna be a stretch.
Maybe we should do like a mid-season one and then end the
Maybe
season.
maybe that is a thing, but maybe also we should just start realizing that anytime we're gonna do a season a show review, it's gonna be an hour. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching all the way through. I know it was longer than we anticipated, but this was a very meaty show, and it was really worth watching. And if for some reason you watched through this entire review and you haven't seen it yet, even though we told you not to, go fucking watch it. Get some Star Wars in your life. Anyways, guys, that being said, we got Dom Smash, Messerschmitt, and myself, SuperSheepin, signing off. We will see you again soon. Who knows what we're going to be reviewing next, but it'll be something. Later. Do not do
Force
that.
be with you.
Don't do that again. I saw that.
Oh.
Bye.